Hi, this is Art with MountainBikeRiders.com, and I just wanted to let you know we are getting the new upgrade for the Airborne Takas, one of our sponsors, Airborne. It's the new Rockshox Kage shock. It comes equipped with a remote reservoir to cool it down when you're really hauling ass down the hills. It also has the preload adjustment for the spring. Including with that is the rebound adjustment for the shock, which will slow your rebound or speed it up. It has an adjustment on there that makes it very simple to see. It's the rabbit and turtle settings, which means fast or slow. So basically we're going to be installing this onto our new Takas, or onto our Takas, the new shock we're going to be putting on there. And what's coming equipped with it before was the Rocco, which is a really good working shock. It's been working good for us for the whole year. It's a Rocco R. This is going to be the new upgrade, the new Rockshox. So we're going to install that baby on there, and you'll see how we do this. Okay, when you're doing this, you may have some problems with the bolts being stuck in there a little bit. So what you want to do is just get a little something that's about the size of the insert bolt, pop it out a little bit, so that way you can work it out with your fingers. You can see here it's popped out just a tad. This will make it a little simpler to pull out. Now the other thing you want to watch out for is when you're doing this, is you see the rear end is off the ground. So you want to put something under there that's going to not make it go all the way down, because when you do that, what happens is you put stress on your cables. So you want to watch out for that. You don't want to put too much stress on the cables when you're relieving the pressure from the shock. So what's a good idea to do is find something that you have, maybe like a chair or a block or something, to put underneath there to keep it when you undo the shock, as you can see here. So we're going to do the first portion of it. See it? Now you don't have a lot of pressure on your cables, on your chain, anything like that. So that makes it a little simpler to keep it from falling off. Another thing you want to do, if you're working in dirt like out here, we're out in Fontana, so this is kind of on the fly. So we're setting up our team bikes. If you have a rag or something, put it down here so it keeps all your bolts and everything off the ground, so that way you don't get dirt on your threads of your screws and bolts and stuff like that. Anything you work on, you want to put something on the ground to keep it from falling off and getting everything dirty. You see, shock comes right out. And me, not being one to be super dirty, I like to clean things up before I put them on. This isn't my bike. This is our team director, our great one, the boss, RL Polycar, as you could tell. His bike's a little dirty. I'm gonna have to talk to him about that. So I just clean everything up, get all the dirt out of spots where we usually can't, because, you know, as you may not know, we had a muddy race a couple weeks ago. So I like to get it all cleaned up so it makes it easier to work on. Doesn't have to be perfect, but that's just me. When I'm out at the races, you always want to bring as many tools as you have. Clean up the areas, make it nice and smooth. Now, this being a new shock, first thing you're going to do, and the way these come, basically, they're going to mount like this. This is the way it comes from Airborne setup when they come from the factories. The reservoir is always on the bottom. Now, typically the rebound is on the bottom. What I like to do is make it accessible for ease of adjustment. So what we're going to do is turn this around. This way, when you put the shock into the swing arm and the frame, this gives you faster and quicker adjustment. So you want to have this facing upward. Just a little tune-up thing that's set up to make life a little easier for you when you're out in the trail. Now, one of the things you want to do typically is you see a little bit of wear on the bolts. It's nothing to have a problem with. Just clean it up a little bit, wipe off the excess dirt, and I like to put a thin coat of grease on there, just to make it a little so it doesn't seize up.
Dirty.
And this is typical, you know, suspension's been working a lot, you've been riding it a lot, hours of riding time. Always good to take your bike apart once a year, go through everything, all the pivots and everything, and grease everything back up. You know, hopefully you don't have any bearing problems, but you would know that right away while you're riding your bike throughout the year. So you really are usually kind of attuned to your bike and the way it's set up. Now we're going to put the shock on. Now, as you look at these bolts, one is your insert. It goes into the shock. Now you got your bolt that goes through and screws in. What I like to do is keep these all on the same side, so that way when you're taking something apart, you have the screw that comes out both on each side of the screw. So now, basically, we're going to put the first one in. Might be a little stiff getting in. Get a hammer, pop it in there like so. We're not going to screw it in yet. Since this is a new shock, we got to see if it's going to mount in properly. We're not going to have any problems. See, now this is a little tight. That's not too bad. Okay. Now, if you look in here, we're having a little difficulty putting the shock in. Now, with the paint on there and stuff like that, it's going to be a little rough. What you want to do is take a little emery cloth and sand it in there a little bit to make it smooth. Paint does get in the way when you have a bike that's been powder coated. It will get in the way, so what you want to do is basically clean it up a little bit, make it smooth a little bit to operate. That way you can put the shock in pretty easy. As you saw when we first put it in, it kind of was a little tough getting in there. So we want to smooth it out a little bit, blow it off, wipe it down so you make sure you don't got any excess paint dust or anything in there. Get the screw, make sure it goes through properly. See? Alright, now we're ready to try it again. Alright, now you've got the shock bolt partially in. Some nice little soft taps. Then bam, you're right in. Now if you look at the shock on this side, you got the bolt pivot in seated correctly. Bolt pivot seated in correctly here. If you look at this side, you'll see how the bolt is seated good into the swing arm, and it's going to be the same way up in the front. Now it's time to put her together. Now you never put grease on your bolts here. As you can tell, there's a little Loctite on there. You guys reapply, take that old Loctite off and reapply it, but you probably won't need it. Just because usually anytime I've ever gotten lucky enough, it's always seated good, so I've never really had to worry about reseating it. But always check your suspension bolts. No matter how many times you take them off or how many times you don't take them off, always check your suspension bolts to make sure everything is tight in the bike before you go riding. Always should do that, no matter what kind of bike you have, whether it's a motorcycle, bike. Always check your suspension to make sure everything's seated good on it. Check your rim bolts, check your suspension bolts. Just do a quick run through. Do it every now and then just to make sure everything is in there good. There you go.
It's still on.
Alright, now you want to make sure you get a good snug fit. Don't over tighten, just to make sure it feels good and tight. That Loctite usually tends to reseat itself, so it's kind of nice about that product. Never use the red, always a blue. And I do it where I feel like it's just tight enough where I don't want to sit there and do it too tight, but it's a snug fit. And there you go, all done. This is Art with MountainBikeRiders.com, and that was reinstalling a shock for our Airborne Taka, the new replacement shock that's going to be on all Takas for 2012. Talk to you later. Have a good one.